Hi everyone,
Hi,
I'm Bilo.
I'm Ngwedi.
Welcome back to our channel.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about something that we find very dear to our hearts, specifically looking at the state of emergency that we're in Botswana and the easing away of the lockdown measures. That is gender-based violence. So we'll be looking at what was anticipated before this period with regards to gender-based violence, so what some of the police reports have said, and the articles that analysts have written and people who are working within the gender-based violence prevention spaces are dealing with.
The reason we're talking about this is our politics, our shared values and our beliefs don't permit us to stay silent any longer on it. We realize that there's been a great deal of silence, and continued silence and silencing is normalization, or continues to normalize and entrench violence against women, rape, battery, child molestation. And in as much as we know that our platform is not, at the time that we share this, such a huge platform, we don't think that it should be another place where there's great silence about this, or another place where we don't talk about things, because one of our beliefs is that if you are quiet about it, then you agree.
Yeah, you're perpetuating.
Yes, exactly. And we really don't believe in the perpetuation of gender-based violence or rape culture or any other form of abuse. Gender-based violence is one of those things that is a very personal thing, because the victims and the survivors of gender-based violence experience it to their core. The trauma that is suffered and that is experienced in that time, or even following that time, is extremely deep. And we really don't think that there's enough that is being done to respond to and prevent, to adequately respond to and prevent gender-based violence. But we do recognize that civil society has been leading this fight for the longest time, right? And they've done a great and amazing job at it. And we think that there's a lot more ground to be covered. There's a lot more change that needs to be seen. There's a lot that can be done, especially by our government as a duty bearer, to protect the rights of the women, to protect the rights of the children, and to promote them, to recognize that we're sharing this on our platform, to say we're not the people that are going to be quiet about it. We're going to recognize the efforts that are being made. We're going to also address the fact that without the adequate government support, there's going to be continued violence experienced in this way and in this form.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, I agree with that, because you talked about how civil society has been doing this work for many years, but they can't do it alone. We need the muscle from government. We need policy change. We need people to enforce. We need the collective from grassroots level all the way to the upper echelons to work together to help in this fight against gender-based violence. Yeah.
As you're saying that, I'm actually thinking about a conveyor belt effect that Prof. Dineo Pumla talks about in her book, Rape. And she talks about how the reason why rape culture is perpetuated and it continues, is one of the things that she addresses is the fear factor, right? Where like women are instilled with a state of fear. Like we live in this continuous state of fear, and there are various factors that kind of perpetuate that state. The first one is, or one of them rather, and I think it's the first one, is that the rapists and the perpetrators of rape and violence feel like they are free. They have the freedom and safety and the protection to continue being abusive, to continue abusing, to continue being violent. The second one is the vulnerability or rapeability of the victims. The last one is the communication by the perpetrator of their recognition of, one, their power, and two, the vulnerability of the victim. Right? And we see it play itself out in so many instances and in so many ways, where even in the public sphere, where we know that women's safety is so elusive, we've mastered how to be safe. I'm not going to go into a store wearing tights, for example, and that's me. And I'm not saying that it perpetuates rape, right? But I'm not going to go into a store like I feel unsafe. I'm so highly alert when I walk into a store or when I'm walking down the street. I think twice before taking a walk. Just stepping out of my house and taking a walk is terrifying. Getting home late when I'm on my own is terrifying. You know what I mean? So I recognize that. So we see it played out, especially in the public sphere, right? Because observing something from the outside is so easy.
Yeah.
Right? So we've seen, all of us have seen women being harassed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we've watched as they have done their best to resist that harassment, and we've seen the backlash or the lashing out, right, by the perpetrator. And we see how, first of all, the only reason why he would even feel bold enough to, in public, harass a woman is because he feels like he's enabled to, he's capacitated to. There's a space to do so.
Yeah.
He also knows that the society that we're in knows and is aware of the vulnerability of the women or the woman, right, or the child. And he's communicating that. He is asserting that, right? And I imagine that in a more private space, in a home, where there's not even the public scrutiny, it's so much more heightened, it's so much more aggravated, it's so much more charged, and it's way more likely, you know?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And one of the things you mentioned is how the men have this power and this knowing, and it's become very effortless because the fear is doing all the work for them, because of the rape, because of the battery, all of the violences that they inflict upon women, and they then don't really face any repercussions for it. So they know they're capacitated, they know that they don't have to answer to anyone, they can get away with it. And just like you're saying, it is heightened during such a time as this, when we're in lockdown, when we are in the state of emergency. And one of the doctors at the University of Botswana, Dr. Musitunyas Musime, she had anticipated that things, especially during pandemics, during wars, during natural disasters, domestic violence is heightened. It becomes more prevalent because now, and the thing that these three things have in common, and specific to us in this pandemic, is that now you are home with your perpetrator. You mentioned earlier on how normally there's an escape, and I thought to myself, home is normally that escape. But if you're in the confines of your home with the perpetrator,
the vulnerability is heightened.
It's heightened. During lockdown, you're not encouraged. In fact, you could say it's against the law to leave your house.
Yes, people are charged.
Yeah.
People are charged.
People are charged hefty fines. And so you don't have an escape, and therefore you experience the violence more. We also observed and read that a number of shelters in Botswana, such as Women Against Rape and Botswana Gender-Based Violence Protection and Support Center, Prevention and Support Center, have during this time had surges of cases of gender-based violence, to the point that I believe Women Against Rape, they were filled to capacity. They had to extend their shelter.
I know the prevention center as well the prevention and support center as well, rather. They had over 100 cases just in the first, I think it was 3 weeks.
3 weeks of lockdown.
And that's so intense. In the 2018 relationship study, it was reported that over 67% of Botswana women had suffered violence or had experienced violence in their lifetime, and that is apparently over double the global average.
Wow.
So gender-based violence is a problem that affects us directly as individuals and as a community and as a society, and there's been such huge silence about it. There's been no
reform of policies or measures put in place to make sure that we take this as seriously as it needs to be taken, because it's been affecting women and children for years, and this time it's magnified. And the lockdown has showed us that it being magnified during this time is a sign that it really should be taken seriously. And you know, I really think I keep thinking to myself, our response to the current health pandemic
is so wild, looking at the number of cases that Botswana has. Right?
Yeah.
But our response to the current pandemic is so concise, it's so precise. Like there's a strategy, there's a whole task force put together for it. There are more women that are dying from gender-based violence. There are more children that are suffering in their homes than COVID-19 has affected. Like, just over this period of intervention, there has been greater violence against women. I think even though the number of women that have died as a result of femicide is far higher. It's not something that we can continue to ignore.
No.
Within the state of emergency, this is a great opportunity to have an engagement, right, or for government to properly and adequately and effectively engage with gender-based violence, look at where the loopholes are, engage with civil society who have been doing a lot of the work, and just come up with solutions that are more effective, come up with solutions that are more efficient, come up with solutions that ensure that the victims and the survivors are protected more than the perpetrators are protected. Because right now, even when you look at the rate of conviction, even when you look at the way that the law is practiced in gender-based violence cases, in rape cases in particular, if you look at the way that people engage with rape culture, it's such that the perpetrators are a lot more protected than the victims. Yeah, so I think there has to be a concerted effort towards the shifting of the control and the power. And in our society that is so responsive to the laws, I think that shift happens at various levels, of course, equally, but also the law has to be cognizant of its influence over people and the way that people respond to it. And we've seen that over the extreme social distancing period. The reason why people were not leaving their homes was because the law did not permit them to do so.
Exactly.
You know?
You mentioned earlier on how, civil society are doing their part and have been for a long time. People at grassroots level have been working tirelessly, but we need government to be involved, laws to change, for that shift that you're talking about to happen, for victims to not be treated as perpetrators, but for the perpetrators to know that there are consequences for their actions, and the people that are doing the work are getting the resources and the help that they need. There really needs to be a distraction of that conveyor belt. And we're going to share in our description some of the contact details of the organizations that are doing the work on the gender-based violence front. And there is a coalition that has been formed in response to gender-based violence.
And these organizations and this coalition that T was mentioning earlier, what they're doing is that they're providing a lot of psychosocial support. They're providing, as we mentioned earlier, shelters. And they also provide legal services. So it's a basket of care, if you will, for a person who may have experienced or is experiencing gender-based violence. Thank you so much for watching this.
Yes, we look forward to hearing from you. Please engage in the comment section. Continue to like the page, continue to share, and subscribe to our page.
Yeah.
Yeah.